Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Internet Podcast. As always, we're happy to be back. I'm Jackie Romer, your co host and a finance intern for the GCR, but working in the Battery office in Atlanta.
And I'm your other co-host, Giovanna Moreno, a sales and marketing intern working at the Battery in the Atlanta office. Today, we're welcoming a fellow Battery intern from the Big South region, Government Affairs intern Marc Gafoor. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
To get things started, Marc, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you go to school, everything like that?
Yeah, so my name is Marc Gafoor. I'm from Durham, North Carolina. I'm currently a rising senior at Wake Forest University. I'm double majoring in English and politics and international affairs. And for Comcast, like you guys were saying earlier, I work in the Battery office in Atlanta, and I'm a government affairs intern for the Big South region.
It's so nice interviewing a fellow Battery intern. We love the representation. Do you like Atlanta and working in the Battery?
Oh, absolutely. The Battery is awesome. It's just really cool that the fact the Braves Stadium is right here, but also that the Battery itself is its own area. Like we have restaurants, stores that you can go into. It's like its own subculture separate from like Atlanta proper in the main city. So it's just really, really cool. Plus, the Braves play right here, and just being able to see that from the ninth floor of the building is sick.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love sports, so being able to have a team super close is such a great thing.
Yeah, and as far as Atlanta goes, this is my first time actually living in Atlanta, but I love it.
What did you expect from Atlanta and what's been new to you?
Yeah, so I actually did a small school project on Atlanta, and I did it on the traffic in Atlanta. And I'd say that was something I had to wrap my head around for sure. That was super new to me. But other than that, I was just expecting a bustling city and like a really cool culture and vibe, and all of that is true.
True. I was definitely not expecting to have to take 30 to 45 minutes to drive home from work every single day. So I would definitely come equipped with a good podcast or a really good playlist to listen to on the way home.
Oh yeah, but despite the traffic, I will say that the nightlife and social life here is awesome. The food's amazing. There's so much to do on the weekends, whether it's hanging out with your fellow interns or people that you're living with. You won't be bored a single day here in Atlanta. I'll tell you that much.
I agree. The food here is awesome. There's so many cool restaurants and there's so many different things to do. So that's super nice.
Yeah, but back to your professional journey and how you actually got to Atlanta. How did you transition your studies and your majors at school into your interest in government affairs?
Yeah, so when I first got to college, I initially wanted to be a business major, but I decided that wasn't really for me. So I picked up an English major. Around sophomore year, I was really inspired by one of my really good friends who had just graduated to pick up a double major in politics and international affairs. With that as a new major that I just added, going into government affairs seemed like the logical next step for me, especially considering last summer I was doing nonprofit governmental work and campaign work. So I wanted to sort of see the corporate side of things.
And had you always known about the actual role of government affairs?
I think the extent to what I learned about the government affairs team came from all the LinkedIn and Handshake job posts I was seeing. I had a broad idea of what corporate government affairs look like, but I didn't really know what it looked like in practice. So being at Comcast, I've gained a lot of really awesome experience and also adjusted and had to adjust what was expected of me.
And how did you find out about the Comcast internship and what did the recruitment process of getting this role look like for you?
Oh yeah. All throughout sophomore year, I was probably applying to 2 to 3 internships a day, and Comcast was just one of them that landed up in my docket. I remember virtually interviewing for them in early November, and then getting a final round interview in December.
I know for me, when I started out in sales and marketing, I expected to do a lot of creative work and analytical work. So, what did you expect to do in your role as a government affairs intern, and how did those expectations play out?
Yeah, when I first got into my government affairs role, I really didn't know what it entailed, so my only expectation of myself was to do the best job I can. Upon actually arriving, though, and seeing the tasks assigned to me, I picked up the pace. I was reading over 100 pages on broadband expansion agreements, and I was also doing a lot of Excel, which I didn't really have a lot of practice of with my studies at Wake Forest. So, one of the bigger steps, especially in the beginning, was just adjusting to those tasks and starting a new role.
You mentioned how you worked in nonprofit work, but did you have any prior experience in government affairs that you applied to your current position now?
Oh, absolutely. So as I was saying earlier, I worked as a campaign intern and a nonprofit as well. So I kind of got to see what working at a smaller grassroots level was like. And so making the transition into a larger corporation was definitely a shift. My experience in forming connections and advocating for myself in my previous positions have definitely been some of the greater skills that I appreciated in my time at Comcast.
So, what was the official transition into the government affairs role like?
Yeah, so I went into the job with an open mindset and going in being ready to learn anything and everything thrown at me, which is a helpful mindset to have because you have to recognize that you're not going to know everything, you're not going to understand everything, especially being in meetings with other departments for the first time, you are going to feel lost. So it's important to stay dedicated to learning, but also going into it with a growth mindset.
I completely agree because we're all still starting out in our professional careers. You have to be okay with not knowing exactly what you're going to be doing at all times, but that's what being an intern is all about. And your managers and your leaders along the way know that too, that you won't know everything, but that's what they're there for to give you things to do.
How would you describe government affairs and does it relate to your political science studies?
Yeah, I think that with government affairs, at least working with Comcast, it's extremely dynamic and always changing. Like there's always something to do. So we're working for municipal governments, and that's one of the big pieces that connects with a lot of political science students. And we're trying to get their support for broadband grant applications. But the main part of the government affairs role is working in the contracts and grant applications with states, specifically to help Comcast as a whole. When I'm talking about what appeals to a college student, I think it would be being able to communicate and meet with all of these municipal governments, but also working with government contracts as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you made that connection for any listeners out there wanting to know more about government affairs. On a larger scale, what's your favorite thing about Comcast?
I think that the culture here is truly spectacular. The team I work for is amazing. They're all very receptive to any questions I have. And if I want to connect with different departments to get a better understanding of the business, they are always more than happy to do so. I think that culture and that sort of vibe, for lack of a better term, is echoed throughout the entire company as a whole. It's easy to tell that employees here care about each other and that it's more of and that it's more than a place of employment, but it's also a place where people are focused on bettering themselves and their fellow employees.
What has been something you didn't expect to do within your role?
I didn't expect to do as much Excel as I'm doing now. But these skills are only going to be beneficial to someone as an intern, but also beyond and as someone working for Comcast.
Yeah, I agree. There were so many times during my internship experience, I did a lot of things I didn't expect to, with my whole team being virtual. I didn't expect to even be able to do any in-person aspects, but when I talked to my manager, I was able to get some in-person experiences here in Atlanta that I'm really fortunate enough to be able to have.
Can you walk us through some of the projects you've worked on in government affairs? What's been your favorite?
I think getting to actually work on the South Carolina broadband grant application was really fun. Not only was I able to input a $64 million budget for that application process, but I also was able to create my own individual project where I created a rural broadband best practices Excel sheet. Through this, I was able to track all of the Big South region state rubrics for grant applications, and that was used to generate a list of best practices for applying to those rural broadband grants. Both of these experiences, I think, added to my overall skill set as a government affairs intern, but also just overall for getting to know the corporate space as a whole.
That's awesome. And it sounds like a really cool project you've been working on. But bringing it back to our theme of this episode, making the most out of your internship, it sounds like you've done just that, especially with some of your individual work.
Now that you're nearing the end of your internship, do you think you've made the most out of it? If yes, how? And if not, elaborate what would you have done differently?
I think that I actually have made the most of my internship. I think the best way to go about it is to do the most work you can do for your own department and the best work, but also to help out other people as you can as well. Having the ability to do a group project with interns in other departments was also really cool because I could see what different parts of the businesses looked like at a hands-on level rather than just shadowing meetings. The ability to connect with so many other departments and gaining an understanding of what business analytics does or what finance does, for instance, all of that has helped me make the most of my experience, I think.
Yes, definitely connecting with other interns is a fun and simple way to make the most out of your internship. I know for me, I've gained so many friendships with people throughout government affairs, sales and marketing, business services, all the way around the business scope. So being able to make those little connections, finding out what everyone else is doing, and seeing how it all relates to one another has been super special.
For listeners wondering about their own journey, how would you advise someone else to make the most of their internship with Comcast?
Be a sponge. Yeah, I would say be a sponge and talk to as many people as possible. That is easily the most important thing. If you're ready and willing to learn, not only will that make you look great to your managers, but will also have a huge positive impact on the work you can do at Comcast overall. But also definitely make sure to connect with other people too.
Yeah, then zooming in a little bit, how can you make the most of tasks on a daily basis? Whether it's making the most of a seemingly simple task or even making the most out of the day when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed.
I think asking questions whenever you're confused and going that extra mile is never a bad idea here at Comcast. I think you can always find ways to optimize your smaller assignments and add more value to the company than you think on your own accord.
How did this summer change your concept of making the most out of it? How will you go forward based on how your internship went?
Yeah, I think now I have a more clear idea of where and what I would like to do out of college. I know that question is usually looming over everyone's head, especially going into senior year or if you're on the cusp of graduating. But having the office experience is not only motivating to finish school strong, it's also a teaching experience for what you could be doing after school.
Okay, so you talked about a little bit about it in your answer, but where do you see yourself going in the future? Is it the same place you saw yourself going when you first took the job here at Comcast?
I think I do see myself going in the same place before I took the job. My big passions include environmentalism, and one of my goals is to work in corporate ESG, so corporate strategy. Being at Comcast, not only did I learn some of the skills necessary, but I also got a chance to pick their brains about what it's like in their roles. While my interests haven't changed, my abilities and perspectives have definitely expanded. And now I'm more equipped to take on bigger projects and jobs.
That's awesome. I always love hearing about where everyone sees themselves going.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, so much for coming in and chatting with us. It was so nice learning a little bit more about you and your position.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. This has been awesome.
Thank you for tuning into the Internet Podcast. This episode was put together by our project lead, Jack Uzinski, producer Darian Carter. Script was co-written by Samantha Barron and Esperanza Torres, and script editor Leah Bader. Co-hosted by Giovanna Moreno and Jackie Romer. The podcast was edited by Lauren Banks, and the graphics were created by Rabia Kang. A big thank you to our support from the University Relations Team, Employee Communications, and Talent Brand teams at the Central Division, including Janda Anderson, Ernesto Sosa, Stephanie Beard, and Renee DeSantis.
If you want to deep dive and create the future with us, please don't forget to apply this fall for a summer internship. Applications open in September, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Stay tuned for the next episode and all season long, as we'll be bringing our best selves. See you then.